Hello. Yes, I'm fine, Donna. Hi there. Dan Curry. I'm going to do a continuation of my presentations here. I've had some people ask questions about the medium that I work with. Some of the specific, like, try to adjust this a little bit. Maybe that's better. The pastels. What pastels would I recommend someone to start with? And the first set that I ever used were these right here. These are called New Pastels by Prismacolor. They're fairly inexpensive. They're also called hard pastels because they are hard, and when you use them, they have a tendency to be not as crumbly and soft. And I'm going to get a piece of paper. I have one right here, just to show you kind of an example of what I mean by that. You can actually do lines with them that are pretty fine. If you take one of these here, which are the Senneliers, that are very, very soft, the line is actually broader, and it's also, you get a little bit more saturation in color when you use the soft pastels. So there's variations in the softness. These pastels right here are called Rembrandts, and I've had this set for a long time. Actually, I purchased this when I was a student, and it was only $50. If I were to buy it today, I think it's about $300. And the sticks, if you buy them one at a time, which you can do, are I think about $1 a piece. The other pastels that I have are the Sennelier, which are the French pastels, and these are really very nice. They're even softer than the Rembrandts. And one of the other differences between these soft pastels and the hard pastels is the soft pastels are more expensive, and they have pigment names: ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, cadmiums. So it would make me scrutinize a little bit about the permanence of the new pastels. I would have to research that a little bit, but I think they're non-toxic, and if they're non-toxic, they're not going to be rated as permanent pigments like the the Rembrandts and the Senneliers, the Sminkies. There's also these here, these are called Unison, and this is the dark set of Unison, and it's basically just an option that you have to get a pretty intensely dark version of the browns, the blues, and the greens, as you can see, and purples, which comes in handy at time. And they're also very soft. And I know that when I'm doing plein air work, there's times when I want to really put down some pigment kind of boldly and quickly, and with good coverage, and the soft pastels really do help with that. The hard pastels have been okay, though. I've done pieces from start to finish with them in years past. If you're going to just work on a piece slowly in the studio to study a still life, or to do a portrait, or some kind of a detailed picture, these will suffice. I mean, they do work, and I've done some nice pieces with them. Anymore, I don't stop with these. I would use these just in the preliminary stage of a picture, and maybe not even very much. Just, you know, I know they're here. I know I'm familiar with the colors that are available, and so I sometimes will use them in the beginning. And these here are the pastel pencils, and I'm not sure, they're made by Carbo with Arthello. This is a very old set. I've had these since I think I was in school, and I don't use them very much. The times that I have used them usually is when I sign a picture. I can sharpen them to a nice point, and then I can sign the picture. Conceivably, you could sign a picture with these too, because the hard pastels are similar to working with a pencil. They're not going to crumble. The other things that I've already shown in a previous demo that I did of the musical mural are these soft covers, and these are fairly inexpensive, and these are nice for doing blending. And as you can see, they come in bulk packs like this, and they're just a few bucks. There are handles that go with these, and I think those were seen in one of my demos also. They're a blue handle, and they're designed so that these little pads fit right on them. So I had questions about papers also, and that's why I brought this piece here. Look at the back side of this piece. It's basically a piece of Arches watercolor paper, and it's pretty thick. It's pretty sturdy. You know, it doesn't bend real easy. I used this product right here, which is golden acrylic ground. It's designed for pastel. It has a textured surface once it's applied. What I usually do though is I take a piece of the watercolor paper, the Arches, and I've been using a roller lately so that it's very smooth, and apply it on there with, I usually mix a color with it. As you can see, this is kind of a purplish color. It's kind of like a Mars violet. And this, I believe, is a combination of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And there may be some white added in with it. This here has a tendency to be just almost translucent if it's applied without any kind of pigment. And I've mentioned, I think, on at least one of my previous demos, that most of the time a pastel artist will use a ground, or a piece of paper, or they call it a ground, that's toned. I have a kind of a preference for this particular color. I like, especially because it's a complementary color when you're working outside with what you have primarily a lot of times is greens, you know, the foliage from the trees, the grass, and the purple has a complementary effect with greens, and purples also are seen frequently in landscapes. So sometimes the picture even has some of the ground left visible, especially when you do plein air work. So that really allows efficiency, really, because if you're going to work on a picture that's got a lot of greens or a lot of middle tones, dark tones, you start out on a piece of white paper, you're going to be spending a lot of time removing the white effect, you know, to get your picture into more of a middle ground. So that's the other reason, really, a middle tone, even a gray, something in the middle. And it's nice to design you know, a paper, a color of a paper according to what you're working on. You know, make a plan and adjust it accordingly. The other surfaces, which, and I have used it with some frequency. This one here is actually a print. This is a reproduction of, this is the Temple of Queen Hatshepsut in Egypt. And this particular picture, pastel, was done on canvas. And guess the easiest way to describe it is it's like velour, and the velour kind of has a stigma with it. Using it for chalks. I mean, sometimes you've seen pictures done on velour that you might not admire maybe the permanence or the idea behind that, but the canvas I purchased is regular cotton canvas, and it's made for pastel and comes in rolls. It's very similar to the same format you would get if you got a roll of canvas for oils or acrylics. It is specifically designed for pastel, and when you apply the chalk to it, it just endlessly takes the pigment. It's kind of amazing. I kind of like working with it. I did try to do a plein air picture one time with it, and I think I picture that. Yeah, it's Dyer's Hill Sunset. It's that one right there. It's called Dyer's Hill Sunset, and it's the hay bales and the sun there. I took a class right up on that hill and set up, and the size of that canvas, which was stretched on stretcher strips, was about probably 22 by 42, I think, so it's pretty big. And trying to develop that rapidly was more than I could really handle. So I only really got a preliminary idea in place before I had to leave, because the sun went down and it was gone. So what I had to do with that was take it back to my studio, and I probably had a photograph, although a photograph doesn't help much when you have a high contrast situation like a sunset. You got to either aim for the sky or the foreground, and it kind of is difficult. Usually the foreground just gets completely blacked out. So I really had to kind of invent the end of that painting, and which I enjoy doing. I basically just invented a lot of the finishing effects of it. So I've done several there. This one here of the picture of my house. I've called it the Curry House. I've called it Ringer Hill Winter, and it's been called Scotty's World. That's my dog Scotty. In that picture, that was done from a photograph that was done in my studio, and I did spend quite a bit of time on that. My brother was visiting me and took a photograph. In this picture, actually, if you look at it, you can see that there's somebody standing up there near the house by my pickup truck. So I was just infatuated with it. I like the idea of that particular setting, and with my dog and myself in the picture. So I did a version of that, and that one has drawn a bit of attention. That was selected to be in a show in the Cairo Opera House in Egypt. Along with my self-portrait, and then the other one was October Light, which is that one there, the bluish colored one there, which is a scene very close to my house. The interesting thing about that is that was an international show that I was invited to participate in, and there was quite a few different artists from different countries that was in the show. I've traveled over there with a group, and we all left from Washington, D.C. and flew over to Milano, Italy, and then into Cairo, Egypt. And there were, I think, 6 or 7 of us who had artwork in this. We each had 3 pieces that could be in the show. And we were able to stay there for 10 days and traveled down the Nile River on a river boat, which was really beautiful. I mean, it even had a swimming pool in it, and we actually did paintings while we were cruising down the river. I mean, I was watching scenery go by and doing very quick, spontaneous croquis sketches, watercolors, and we did stop, and I was able to study more, long-term subjects. did a lot of plein air during that trip. I think I counted 10 or 11 of those pieces that I did there. The one of Queen Hatshepsut, the temple, was done after I returned from home, and I worked on it in the studio. And yeah, Dyer's Hill, Sunset, the Curry House, the temple, they were all done on canvas. I also did a large version of the Statue of Liberty. There's been several out there, and I think I've sold a couple. I did his wedding portrait on canvas. That I did a long time ago. The thing about pastel, which is one of its concessions, is that it has to be framed under glass, and it's very fragile. It could be very easily destroyed by either water or even just taking your hand across it and smudging it. Moisture. So it requires some attention to protect it, and every piece of art requires protection from sunlight, direct light. And one of the advantages of covering your art with glazing would be that they have UV protection in glass now, and also non-glare glass. So once you get a picture covered with that type of covering, it's protected and also easier to view than on with regular glass. The Pastels does have another concession about it, trying to handle it. I have sent some of my pastels through the mail. I did it one time and I had damages, broken glass. It's something I don't even do anymore. I will not send a work of mine by mail. It's just not, pastels really does not like to be jarred around, banged around, and you never know what's going to happen if it's even if it's in a box where it's really wrapped tightly. It's still going to be subject to vibrations from just being moved around. So it's one of the concessions, and I think that's the reason a lot of painters will stay away from it as a specialty. I kind of was in a position when I was first learning that I actually had issues with the solvents. It really irritated my skin. Got to the point to where it was hard for me to concentrate because I was like scratching and itching constantly. And it's funny because I actually like the smell of oil paints, and you go into a studio where you can smell it. There's a kind of it's a nice smell, I think. But my body didn't like it, so. And I didn't particularly like acrylic paint. It just dries very fast, and I've done acrylics, and I found that I could work pretty fast with them, but I never really liked the surface, kind of the surface quality of an acrylic painting compared to an oil painting. So I have since done a couple of paintings, oil paintings, but not very much. So thought I would talk a little bit today also about monetizing artwork. It's worth noting that one of the first videos I did was a musical mural, and I used music from David Bowie, which I just love his music, but I frequently work with music as a background. It was noted to me by the YouTube people that I cannot monetize a video where I'm using someone's music without their permission, which I understand. So if I wanted to use it, I said I could just take the music out. So I am kind of keeping that in mind. I'm new at this. But on the subject of monetizing my art, it's worth noting to people who might be interested in how to handle that. First of all, it's nice if you do something that somebody likes, that they feel like buying. I've had some fortune with that. I've been able to sell some work even in an area that's economically depressed up here in northeastern Pennsylvania. which I'm happy to do commission work, which I've done. I had one writer tell me one time that she was glad that I decided to make prints, though, because she said that she likes my work, but she said she really didn't have like $1,000 to buy a picture, one that I might have spent a lot of time on. But if I could have it reproduced nicely, then it could be available for a lower price. And most of my sales over the years have been prints, and actually, the one I showed you earlier, it was the house of my personal home, which is a picture I do not intend to ever sell. It's just kind of an icon, and we will keep it. But I have sold, I believe it's been 5 full-size, actual size prints of that, and I've sold them for $500, which is a pretty good price, I think. And they're printed on canvas. So what I would have to say about this is that the quality of printing right now is such that reproductions are really high quality. They're not only the quality of capturing the image faithfully, so that it's it almost looks like a clone. I even have examples of that, which I may show in another video. I have one that you can't tell the difference between the original and the print. And pastels are actually one of the easier mediums to capture. You don't have the effects of an oil painting, which involve impasto, real thick paint buildup, but even that, it's amazing. I've seen giclee prints of work that's collage work that actually has paper edges that you swear when you look at the print that it looks like that there's actually a piece of paper pasted on top of there, and it's not. It's just the way the shadow effects are so faithful. And I do get my printing work done from probably one of the best printers in our country, and that's Bob Lisa over in Tunkhannock. And he's done most of my prints, and his work is just super. He did all the artists that had their work sent over to Cairo, and that's worth noting. We were in an international exhibit, and there was nobody that had a problem with us using giclee prints instead of an original picture, and that was actually safer for us, being that they were being sent over in the belly of an airplane, and you never know. There's always a risk there could be loss or damage, and really it was more important for the show effect just to have a quality representation of the image idea. Just going to add one more note here at this stage. I've talked about the paper, I've talked about some of the tools and the pastels. When we get down to me doing a demo, which I hope to do soon, some of these background things will already have been covered a little bit about the different options in paper and the different tools and the different types of pastels. Getting back one more time to the giclee prints, I just want to let you know I have about 20 prints that I have available now. I think it's a little over 20, maybe 22. I don't know if all of them are visible online. I think most of them are. I have my website is dan-curry.com, and I do have, I think, almost all of them listed on there. The pricing is available in some of those, but usually they run on the smaller format, 12 by 16, anywhere from 100 on that 12 by 16. Sometimes they're a little more than that. The 30 by 40, which is the full size of the one I was talking about, would be in the $500 category. And then a 16 by 20, 250, sometimes 200. So, I welcome anybody who's interested in having some artwork that's homespun, so to speak, that's and represents this local area. To feel free to contact me, and I've been able to mail prints out The last 3 that I sold actually went to New Jersey, Tennessee, and Florida. And of course, that's the other reason I like the YouTube option, because it allows me to reach possibly a larger audience than just Northeastern Pennsylvania. So I'm going to close for now, and I welcome any comments, contacts. My email address is on my website. It's DanielCurry@gmail.com. Any questions, any comments, I would appreciate. And you have a nice day. Bye.